Okay, so this morning, from 8:30 to 10, we're going to give an overview of the status of the forum. And this is the agenda we're going to follow. I'm going to go through the status, talk about a little bit who we are, what our values are, the scope of the initiative, just quickly show you the vision, which you've seen over the week many times. Talk about membership, and talk about some of the liaisons that we have established as part of this forum. And then talk about some of the things we've done in the last year, some of the publications, and also look at the timeline going forwards. And then my colleagues are going to come up, and one thing we did announce this week is the version 1 of the standard, the preliminary standard. And each of the people that were involved in the standard are going to come and talk a little bit about each section. Then we'll talk about enterprise architecture, and then we'll talk about what we're going to be doing this year in terms of activity around the business working group and the technology working group. So this is probably just a refresher for most people. Basically, who we are, we're a consortium of vendors, suppliers, end users, system integrators, industry consortiums, academia. And basically, we've all come together. We started in San Francisco about 2.5 years ago and formed this forum. And the intent is to develop an open automation system. What are the values? What are we trying to get out of this open system? We want to drive value from operations, ensure safe and reliable operation, reduce lifecycle costs, provide an easy upgrade path, so being able to upgrade online in place rather than have to shut down every time. Be able to have portability of software between hardware platforms, so we can take an application from one hardware platform to another to make upgrades easy to new platforms. Easy integration of new technologies as they become available. And we want to foster and reward innovation and protect intellectual property. A lot of what we're doing is not changing the components themselves, we're changing the interfaces to the components. So that's what the open means. It means that you'll be able to plug one vendor's module into another system and it should work seamlessly. And the scope of the work, basically we excluded safety systems, so they're not part of the scope, but everything else from a DCS or PLC and through the HMI up into the level 3 applications are included in the scope of this effort. This is, I think everyone's seen this many times. Basically, this shows you the architectural framework that we're working to. Everything in yellow is new. Everything in blue is a legacy system. So this shows you the DCNs, which are the I/O at the edge where control can be done. We have a new system bus that will allow the data to move around the system. The RTAC, which is the computer where you can do higher level applications, things like optimization, asset management, and then connections into the cloud, whether they be on-premise or off-premise to do data analytics, but for data that doesn't need to go through the DCS system. So I think everyone's seen this. I'm sure my colleagues will touch on this as they go through the technical sections of the document. Some of the members, there's lots of logos here. You can see we're definitely a cross-section of the process industries, or I guess industrial automation, representations from many end users, particularly in the oil and gas segment. We do have pulp and paper, we do have pharmaceutical. We're still missing some industries, and we always keep putting out a plea for other end users to join us. So for example, the power industry is not a member of the forum. We would like to get people from the power industry, and food and beverage as well is the one that's also missing. This is a very hard slide to read, but basically this is showing you the members categorized by the type of business they're in, whether they'll be hardware providers, software providers, end users. And I can't read the numbers there, but at the bottom you can see we've had quite a few ads, and not many people have left the forum, so it's really still growing. I think, Ed, we're up to about 88 members at this time. This just shows you the organization of the forum at the high level. Don Bartusiak from Exxon and myself lead the forum. And then we're broken into working groups that tackle different parts of the issue. So we have a business working group that's looking at things like conformance, looking at how do we procure open systems in the future. And we have a marketing and outreach group that's looking to get new members and promote what we're doing. We have a technology working group that's looking at all the different technical aspects, whether it be networking, application portability, security, even the hardware design. And then we have an enterprise architecture group, which is using elements of the open group technology to look at the requirements that we need for these systems in order to build a platform. And then one thing that we keep telling people, we're not trying to develop a new standard. We're basically a standard of standards. And so we have people that interface into other standard groups to make sure that we're taking advantage of what exists out in the industry right now. We have met several liaison relationships, and we want to make sure that we're working in concert with these other organizations and not stepping on each other. So CSIA, DMTF, which is an interesting one. It's not actually from the OT industry, it's from the IT industry. And this, we found some technology called Redfish, which can be used for system management. And again, we'll talk about that as we get into the details. And we got alignment with the mining industry, ISA, Nomura, the OPC Foundation, PLC Open, and ZVEI. And then we're actively discussing with the Fieldcom group, Automation ML, and also the ASCII group, which is a 62443 validation authority. These are the publications we've had over the last year and a little bit. The business guide was the first document that came out. What it is really an overview of what the Open Process Automation Forum is about, why it's being done, what is the scope. It talks about use cases, what the new world will look like in different industries. It's well worth reading. It really gives you background about what our base platform is, where we're starting from. These can be downloaded on these links that are shown here. Then we had a requirements white paper, which is really looking at what the functional requirements that users had that we have to meet in order to have a system that will work for them. We had a snapshot of the technical reference model that came out early this year, and basically, or maybe late last year. And this is just where we were at the time in terms of what the technical architecture was going to look like. And then the main publication is the one I just mentioned earlier. It came out, we announced it this week, and it's a 5-part preliminary standard of the architecture for an open platform. It's the first of several publications, and it's really the first one that vendors can start seeing what directions they should be going for their development activities. It talks about some of the technologies that have been defined. Again, a very hard slide to read, but we have a rigorous project management of this forum. And again, there's the different tracks shown here, but basically, version 1 of the technical standard came out this year, this week, and we expect, and we're hoping that the next version, version 2, will be out in time for the ARC forum next year, or maybe a little bit sooner than that. And then a year later, the next one will come out. We're also working on things like a conformance guide. How do we certify components to be OPAF compliant? And so there's a group that's working on that, and we will be publishing a document probably mid-year, at least a preliminary document around that. And then also a procurement guide. How do you procure one of these types of systems going forward? And again, we're working towards the middle of this year to publish that. So very aggressive schedule. This is moving very quickly. And if you heard ExxonMobil's presentation on Tuesday, you can see that they're going to start using these standards to build prototypes and do field trials starting in 2020 and 2021. So a very aggressive timeline for us to get all this out. Oops, did I go? Oh, it's a new deck? Okay. So that's just an overview. I think we're going to have questions at the end. So we'll have my colleagues come up and talk about different aspects, and then we can move on to the question and answer.